our beer cans open, I want to welcome everybody to a very, very special episode of the Weird Al podcast, the podcast where we talk about two of the greatest things in the world, beer and Weird Al. I am still Lauren. John.
And I am still John. Yep, I'm here. Still
Very
John.
good. And we have a very special guest with us today, the man that has written some of the most magnificent tomes about our hero, Weird Al. We've got Mr. Nathan Rabin today. Hi, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing absolutely fantastic. Very excited to talk about Weird Al Yankovic and beer as well. They're two of my favorite things.
Oh, so you're going to get along just fine here. Actually, before we even get too far into any of this, I do need to say that your book, The Weird Accordion to Al, which we will talk about more as we go through all of this today, was one of the primary catalysts for us doing this silly little podcast in the first place. We each independently got the original, not ridiculously self-indulgent, ill-advised vanity version of this book. And we said, hey, if he can write a book that goes through Weird Al's music catalog, why can't we do a podcast and drink beer while we do it? We just wanted to pretty much thank you so much for writing this book, because it kind of gave us the kick in the pants to be like, you know what, there's an audience for people that want to read and or listen to stuff about Weird Al.
Thank you. That is incredibly validating. I kind of felt like when I started this long process in, Jesus, it must have been 2011, 2010, something around then. I kind of felt like my job when I wrote Weird Al Yankovic's Coffee Table book with him, Weird Al the book, in 2012. I felt like, okay, my job here is to make the best, most convincing, most entertaining case for Weird Al as a major artist, as a satirist, as somebody of tremendous worth and value that, society hadn't quite come around on. And I feel like he and the world have made that argument for me in the interim. But I like to think that I kind of finished the process by writing this book. I kind of completed a task that I didn't even know had 2 or 3 or possibly 4 parts when I began it. But that's the wonderful thing about doing something creative, is you never know where it will lead you. You never know how long its tail will be. You never know what's going to emerge from what came before. I just kind of knew that good things would happen if I wrote about Weird Al, and I had to kind of wait, because this was a feature on my website for close to 3 years, and not to tell tales out of school or anything, but it was a phenomenally unpopular column on my website. Like, I was perpetually amazed at how unpopular it was. I'm like, but people love Weird Al. How come they don't want to read a 1,000-word essay about Party in the Leper Colony, or my baby's in love with Eddie Vedder? And then I later like, oh, they don't want to read about it because it's a 1,000-word essay about my baby's in love with Eddie Vedder, or Party in the Leper Colony, or Mr. Frump and the Iron Lung. And these are of tremendous interest to Weird Al super fans, to diehards, to people who love him, who want to live in his world forever. Not of terrible interest to, the average American, who I think likes Weird Al Yankovic, but not necessarily enough to read a 500-page book about him.
Yeah, I am feeling exactly what you're saying. It's like when I go to a beer store or something to buy a beer to pair with one of the songs on this podcast, I end up having to explain to people what this podcast is all about. And I was like, yeah, so we talk about beer, which everybody's like, oh, that's really cool. And then I say, and Weird Al Yankovic, and they go, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always fun. I walk around the around the beer shop, and I'm like, I just keep it in my brain, like, how am I gonna ever pair this one up? And yeah, we have some very off the wall connections, but they work. I mean, who really cares why you pair it up? You're just sitting drinking a beer and shooting the shit.
Yep.
Oh, totally. But and again, I kind of I assume, like all writers, that I have a terrible personality, and that people will dislike me strongly on the basis of just me being me. So I need to have something that everybody loves to offset my terribleness as a human being. So that used to be The Onion, and it used to be like, man, you're talking like, but I write for The Onion. Like, oh wow, that's awesome, that's impressive. I think more of you now. And now, like when, for example, a guy came came over to fix our washing machine, and he's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I write books about Weird Al Yankovic." He's like, "Oh, that's awesome! I love that guy." And I feel like if you ask a lot of people, that's going to be their response to Weird Al Yankovic. He's just a person who has tremendous goodwill. He's just an enormously beloved figure. I feel like it's appropriate that Paul Rudd famously dressed up like him for Halloween, because I feel like Paul Rudd is one of the only people in pop culture who is as beloved, and where everything about them is just exceedingly positive. There's not really like a dark, seedy underbelly. They just make the world a better place by being alive, and then also through their art.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're both also relatively ageless.
Yeah, definitely, and also, I mean, to belabor the metaphor even further, Peyton Reed, who is the director of Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, sort of got his start, or at least very early on, as he directed every single episode of the Weird Al Show.
Oh, wow.
And it's one of the things where he's very, very sharp, and he has a great sense of like who will go on to do great things. And yeah, Peyton Reed beyond Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. He also did Bring It On. He also did Down with Love. Very, very talented Breakup. Very talented filmmaker with a real eye, and I think that kind of comes through in Weird Al the Show, which is incredibly visual and cinematic and crazy and doing a bunch of things that kids shows weren't supposed to do at the time, and consequently led to it getting canceled fairly quickly.
Well, he didn't really want it to be a kid's show. When he originally conceptualized it was not supposed to be like a Pee-wee's Playhouse kind of deal. It was supposed to be like
yes and no. I think it very much was supposed to be a Pee-wee's Playhouse type of deal, where that was obviously kind of the probably the primary inspiration, and to get a brilliant man named Wayne White, who designed the sets and did a lot of the puppets and a lot of the characters for Pee-wee's Playhouse, and he did a similar thing for Weird Al the Show. And I think kind of his aesthetic, sort of the idea there, was to do Pee-wee's Playhouse by way of Mr. Show. And that's great, and I feel like that would have done great on Adult Swim. That would have done great on HBO Max, like CBS, not so much.
Yeah.
People want to see, whatchamacallit, the Sugar Bombs Choco Hour, to borrow the old Simpsons gag there. But yeah, people have a very narrow conception of what a kid's show should be, and to say that the Weird Al Show transcended that would be an understatement.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I actually just relatively recently, as a 35-year-old grown woman with no children, rewatched the Weird Al Show. And yeah, I think there was a lot when I watched it initially as a, when was that? That was late 90s, right? That
97.
Was like
yeah.
97,
It's like
right.
several magical months in the year of the year of our Lord, 1997.
Yeah, so I think I was a little too old at the time to be what the target audience was supposed to be, but I was a little too young to get some things that were going over my head in that show at the same time. So when I just recently rewatched it, I got a whole new appreciation for how, just completely, there's really no other word, just how weird it was. And I think the beer helped. I would drink beer while I watched.
Yeah.
Well, two other words I would use would be dark and non-commercial. And I think those are all qualities that, in the short term lead to not being successful, and then the long run and to being having a real cult following and kind of enduring in a way that the TV shows that were very popular in 1997 on Saturday morning television probably have not.
Yeah. I mean, we just, and that clearly, I don't think visual media outside of music videos have really been the place where Weird Al has kind of found the success that I think he should have. Like UHF, obviously we love it, but
was it a box office smash? No. It's a cult classic, though. Like you'll find a lot of people that are like, "Oh man, I love UHF," but it was never really like that smash hit that
No, it was a big old flop. As a matter of fact, I think that was again kind of
right.
one of the big disappointments, sort of in his life. Because again, he's a very visual person. He loves movies. I feel like he could make a lot of really really great motion pictures. But yeah, just for whatever reason, I think part of it was, like it was a very very big summer for movies that appeal to kids. And
Yeah.
it kind of got elbowed out by that. And it's interesting, sort of my worlds and how they kind of overlap. Sort of one of my big heroes as a kid was Roger Ebert. And I grew up
Uh,
watching Siskel and Ebert and kind of looking up to him and thinking, wow, that must be such a cool thing to be able to watch movies for a living and then to write about them. And you must make so much money and it must be so glamorous and just get to see movies all the time. So he was this kind of very towering figure in my adult life as well, where I lived in Chicago. I used to go to the screening room, and he actually blurbed my first book, and that was one of the greatest form of validations in my entire life. And he said, it was like he compared it to Dostoevsky, like he talked about my dad. It's like, oh, all these crazy cool things. And then I went back and I looked at his review of UHF. And if you can, go and look at it because it's full of personal vitriol. Like, from reading it,
Hmm.
you would think that Weird Al had murdered his family. He calls it an attempted comedy, and there's just
uh-huh.
this very weird personal aspect to it. One of which is that he doesn't know how to hold his body on screen and that he has bad posture. And that's one of the things that keeps this movie from being successful is that Weird Al Yankovic doesn't stand upright enough. And I think he probably, over the course of his life, got to see oh, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong about that. And
Mhm.
sometimes something that just seems silly and ridiculous and stupid, there's actually so much more going on behind it. And I feel sort of UHF is quintessential representation of that. I think it's also interesting in that he made this movie when he was 28, 29 years old. So
Yeah.
this was a lifetime ago. And I said it sort of in my book, sort of the history of pop culture and pop music is the history of what people did while they were in their 1920s. When they were in their 20s, and not when L, time traveled to the 1920s and hung out with Hemingway
Oh, they
and
wouldn't have known what
Fitzgerald.
to make of him.
Yeah, I like now. I'm thinking of a sequel to Midnight in Paris, with Weird Al Yankovic going back to introduce parody music in the 1920s. I would like it more than the Woody Allen version.
Oh, for sure.
All,
For
all, all,
sure.
all things considered, of your WAs, I'm much more into Weird Al than I am Woody Allen. Hasn't always been the case, but one of them has done a lot for me and my family. The other whom has completely destroyed his enormous legacy. You
Yeah.
can probably guess which one I'm referring to.
Yes, of course. Weird Al has destroyed his legacy. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
Yes,
No, no. Before we get off of UHF entirely, I do have a question for you. Have
sure.
you ever, have you ever tried a Twinkie Wiener sandwich?
I have not had a Twinkie Wiener sandwich, and it's tempting, and that's one of the things I feel like I'm so immersed in this world that you sort of see the Weird Al analogies for everything. I literally cannot eat at a Mexican restaurant without, I gotta have a tostada. That's right, I
Yeah.
want the whole enchilada. My only addiction has to do with a flour tortilla. I need a quesadilla. Without that going through my head, I can't eat bologna. And I think it's one of the reasons why, he's endured and he has such a big legacy. Is so much of what he does is synonymous with things that people do all the time, or it's
Yeah.
synonymous with things that are ubiquitous. I can't think about Michael Jackson, which also a lot darker now than it was when I was 8 years old, without thinking of, fat, without thinking of Eat It. I can't think of Nirvana without thinking of Smells Like Nirvana. I can't eat various ethnic foods without thinking about, Taco Grande or lasagna. So there's all these things that everybody does, which first off was watch television, and then was eat food, and then in the 90s it was kind of that was his movie era, so he was
Hmm.
doing all these songs about these movies that everybody had seen and everybody knew about and everybody had strong feelings about, and then yeah, kind of in the years after that it was all about kind of online culture. And unless you're my dad in Morton Grove, like you have a computer and you're online and you know about online culture. So I think he was very, very savvy and very canny in kind of the way that he engineered his career, where it overlaps with pretty much everything, And I like to say, like when he
Yeah.
steps onto a stage in 2020, he embodies popular culture.
Yeah.
It's not just that writes songs about pop culture or that he's part of it. It's like he's pretty much pop culture incarnate at this point in his career.
Yeah, obviously you hit the nail completely on the head with that, because like when I think of like Weird Al is basically taking what's in pop culture, and he's like a funhouse mirror that pop culture looks back on itself through.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, and that's just so cool. And the reason I had to ask about the Twinkie Wiener sandwich was because we have done it on this show.
If you get the chance to do it, do it. It's not terrible. It's really not terrible.
It's not bad. We again, the beer helped.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of beer, I think we've just hit a new record in that we're already like 15 minutes into the episode and had not even talked about our beers.
Yeah. Although I just want to say that again, I feel like a pompous ass quoting myself. But one of the lines in the book that I'm proud of is I'm talking about the Twinkie Wiener sandwich as being a trash food turducken. Of processed foods that are so processed that they're not really food anymore, that they're just kind of like products that you can buy and then combine in a way that is and again, I think that's about so much of Weird Al is it's this love-hate relationship.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a celebration of gross food and processed food and the idea of food as, capitalist product. But there's also something kind of irresistible about it as well.
Yeah, it's there was a guy on YouTube where he actually did a gourmet version of the Twinkie Wiener sandwich where he made his
Babish, binging with Babish.
Yeah. He made his own cream-filled puff pastry, and I believe he used a chorizo sausage, and then he got one of those cake piping bags, and he made some kind of a cheese to put on top of it. And he said it wasn't bad, but I was like, okay, but you didn't use an actual Twinkie. That's the problem.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think it's one of those things too, where kind of talking about why he's endured, is that he has kind of his cult, which are sort of the fans and the army, and they've only gotten bigger and more devoted through the years. But there's also these sort of micro cults, and there are micro cults within micro cults. So there's kind of the UHF micro cult, and then within that micro cult, you also have Spatula City. You also have the Twinkie Wiener sandwich. You also have Stanley Sadowski's Funhouse. So you have all of these things that, again, it's kind of like a Russian nesting doll of kind of geeky obsessions.
There's definitely levels. I mean, I was the one, I bought the Spatula City t-shirt. So I have that. So I guess I would land in the Spatula City bucket. And one day I actually wore my Spatula City shirt out. And a guy actually asked me, "Is that a real place?" And so then, of course, I had to get on my Weird Al UHF stump and explain to him, no, it's not a real place, but it has a real place in my heart, and here's why. And I like you said, I can't use a spatula in my day-to-day life without at least internally going Spatula City.
Yeah.
And like, it's wild. I stayed at a lake house for my best friend's brother's wedding. And so it was like her and her family, and we're all at this lake house, and we're cooking dinner, and there was a spatula, and there's a ton of people in the house, and I just pulled the spatula out, and at the top of my lungs, again, I had been drinking, but at the top of my lungs, I just went, Spatula City! And everybody got really, really quiet and had no idea what I was talking about. And so, again, I had to explain what Spatula City was all about, and I even pulled the Spatula City bit up on YouTube. I was like, no, this is what I'm talking about. And it was like, oh, okay, so
Oh yeah, you're weird.
yeah, you're weird.
Well,
I'm
and
like,
Yeah.
again, it's so again sort of like just the denseness of it is that like because again if you look at the commercial, it's brilliant. It's very very funny, but part of what makes it funny is the specificity of it, and that the guy who is the head of Spatula City, that he's a combination of two different spokesmen. One of which is Cy Sperling, who would say, I'm Cy Sperling for Hair Club for Men. Remember, I'm not only the president, I'm also a client. And again, you kind of look at it and it sort of looks like Tim and Eric, kind of anti-comedy from the perspective of 2020, but was very, very successful. And he was on the air. He became an icon for that. And then Victor Remington, not Victor Remington, I don't know what his name was, but he'd say, I liked it so much, I bought the company.
oh
And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think so many people don't have that frame of reference. That's not their context for it. But even if you don't know that it's making fun of two very, very specific commercials and pitchmen, in addition, to this absurdist notion of a store that only sells spatulas, it's still very funny. And you don't have to get the initial reference necessarily for it to work comedically, which I think is true of a lot of Al's stuff.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think we said maybe in our UHF episode that like I had no frame of reference for Gandhi 2,
Mm.
but I still thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like a lot of people now they probably know Gandhi too more than they
More
know
than
the original Gandhi, which was a very huge, very iconic Academy Award-winning motion picture. But now people are like, do I really want to watch a 3.5 hour long prestige movie about how racism is bad?
no.
And it was like probably not. Like I think I probably saw Gandhi when it came out when I was a kid, but I have never been tempted to watch it again.
No. No, I've never seen it. I know of it. I've never seen it, and I have like no real desire to watch it. But we really need to talk about our beers before we move on.
Yay! Please go for it.
Yeah, because we have to make sure we shout these things out. I'm very quickly going to
Absolutely.
say that I have a nice hazy IPA called Hazy Hero from Revolution Brewing in Chicago. And I have to give a quick shout out to my buddy Dave from the Beer in Front podcast for sending this my way because it is a delicious, delicious beer. And I decided to have this today because it's called Hazy Hero and Weird Al is a hero. That's my pairing.
There you go. I have from the Dewclaw Brewing Company in Baltimore, Maryland, the Hop Tarts Wild Berry Double IPA. It's obviously a play on the name of Pop Tarts, the famous breakfast pastry, which we've talked about is a Pop Tart or ravioli, but that's besides the point. I chose it because Pop Tarts and Weird Al is an amalgamation of a lot of pop culture. So I figured we were just talking about Weird Al in general today. So Hop Tart, Pop Tart, there we go. It's a 8% beer, and
there you go.
it's pretty good.
Got me beat. I'm 7.8, so you got me beat slightly today, John.
Oh.
And I'm drinking Mountain Dew, which does not have any alcohol in it, but has an enormous amount of caffeine, something that I am tremendously addicted to.
Oh, yeah.
Now, did you know that Mountain Dew was originally created to be a whiskey mixer?
I did not know that. I knew that it originally had much more of a hillbilly-ish sort of connotation. One of its earliest taglines was "It'll tickle your innards."
Yeah.
So I could totally see it, and it's funny because I'm a juggalo. In addition to being a Weird Al Yankovic fan, as I'm sure all of your listeners are as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And when you go to the gathering of the Juggalos, as I'm sure all of your listeners know as well, you got to drink Faygo, and or Faygo cocktails. Almost nothing pairs well with Faygo. Like it's acceptable enough as a soda, but like it's like a Moon Mist vanilla vodka wouldn't necessarily be bad. But if you're not drinking Faygo, you better be drinking some Mountain Dew.
Oh, there you go.
That is also some hillbilly ass concoction, which is why I have been again hopelessly addicted to it over a period of decades.
Magnets, how do they work?
Yeah.
God. Basically, we sort of mentioned that your book, The Weird Accordion to Al, the original smaller version, was one of the main reasons why we decided to get into doing this podcast in the first place. And you've already touched on how, this and Weird Al, the book, kind of, labor of love for you. And seriously, they're both they're on my coffee table all the time, because in doing this I end up referencing each of them more than I thought I would reference any single book about anything, which is wonderful. One thing I love in the introduction to The Weird Accordion to Al is obviously Weird Al's introduction to the book, The Weird Accordion to Al. But the one thing that popped out to me as a college professor of English and writing is Weird Al's little bit about having to correct numerous punctuation, thousands upon thousands of punctuation, spelling, and grammatical errors. You'll be able to tell me this. Did he really actually have to correct that much? Like, how? I know well, because he's got the song "Word Crimes," right? So clearly, I've got the "Word Crimes" T-shirt. So again, I know that grammar is kind of my thing. People come to me to fix that. So is he like a huge grammar nerd? Because that would make me love him even more.
He is an enormous grammar nerd, and also it wasn't really a bit. He genuinely had to fix a lot of things. I'm proud to say that with the extended version of the book, he also copy edited that as well. And he volunteered to copy edit it. Like, that was a very, very nice thing, because again, like, I would not be able to meet his price at all. There was part of me that was like, oh goodness, like, what if he takes these 2 days to like fix all of my spelling and all of my grammar and all of like my quotation marks and whatnot, and he would have been using that to like write his 15th album. It's like either go into the wilderness and make my most personal, incendiary, brilliant work today, or I can, fix somebody who should know how to do all of these things originally. So yeah, I felt implicated by his introduction, and yeah, it's just kind of weird that he's written very, very glowing, very nice, very kind things to me via email, much more so than in the introduction to my book, where ostensibly it was to be like, hey, this is why it's good, and you should definitely check it out. And he definitely said that, but he definitely focused on my horrible failings as a writer and a human being. Also, don't tell tales out of school or anything, but there's a reason that I've been writing professionally for 23 years. I've never been an editor in any context, and that's because I really love writing, and it's my passion and what I'm good at, but I'm not a polished writer at all, and I can be a little bit messy, I can be a little ungrammatical. So yeah, I felt implicated both by his introduction and also by the song Word Crimes. And I'm not saying that there necessarily is a cause and effect relationship between him working with me in 2011 and then 3 years later writing a song about how terrible it is that people abuse the English language egregiously. But there might be a connection. I don't know whether it's narcissism or self-hatred or whatever, to be like, that song is about me. I'm so vain, I probably think that song is about
me. Putting this all together in my mind, I feel like I wouldn't live in the fact that it might be all about you. You may have been part of the inspiration for it, because there are so many people that are so good at writing but so bad with the technical bits of it. I teach technical writing. Okay, my degree is in creative writing, so I have my MFA in creative writing, so I could theoretically be writing creative things, right? But it's not my passion like it is yours. My passion is very much okay, I want to take this and clean up this thing that somebody else wrote. I have more of a passion for editing than I do for writing, which is very interesting to me that, Weird Al kind of took your book and kind of he did to it what I probably would have wanted to do to it too.
Yeah, and one of the other things too. So like, yeah, he went and he fixed my errors, but he did not actually change anything.
Yeah.
And he sort of fact checked it as well, and it was like very flattering. And that he literally, after like 500 pages, he literally had like 4 notes.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
they were of that were like Richard Bennett played like the banjo, and the other one rides the bus EP. It wasn't
Mhm.
like I got huge things wrong. But yeah, it was very, and it was weird because, like, yeah, it was a very long process of writing the column. Well, for my website, Nathan Rabin's Happy Place, which is kind of my main gig, the place where I pour my heart and soul into everything. And there was kind of a nice thing about it when I was writing it, where I'm like, okay, this is a tiny audience, and Al isn't going to read this for a while, so I can be as
Mhm.
self indulgent as I would like. I can do as many like crazy tangents as I'd like. I can literally just do whatever I want because nobody's paying attention. And then, yeah, when people actually, when it came time to actually turn it into a book, it was very exciting, but it was also a little bit scary because it's like, oh, people are actually going to listen now, and more specifically, like Al is definitely going to read everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I definitely walked a fine. And part of it is just the enthusiasm and the love and the optimism. Like it's very authentic and it's very genuine. And I think I kind of started this in part because in 2017 the world was kind of a grim place. And I'm like, I
Mhm.
need to do something that will force me to think about Donald Trump less, and good things in the universe that I like more. And this definitely fit that. But to the point where, like, yeah, God, when I was revising it for the book, I just cut lots and lots of stuff out. Like it probably cut about a third of it in its entirety. But I left in a handful of references to Donald Trump, because I kind of felt that, like, okay, obviously he's not the most overtly political person in the world, but there is unmistakable political content. There's unmistakable social commentary, and a lot of it has to do with television. A lot of it has to do with narcissism. A lot of it has to do with pitchmen and people who think that because they're successful in business or in entertainment, that makes them a god. And what I discovered by publishing the book is that people did not like that. And I
Mhm.
got a bunch of really angry reviews on Amazon, and it upset me to the point where I literally removed every reference of Donald Trump from there, and I'm glad that I did it in part because I like whether or not Donald Trump wins election, his presence is going to piss people off. I knew going, I'm like, okay, this is going to potentially upset some people. I didn't realize how angry it would make people. I didn't realize that people would look at a 500-page book and then they'd like only see 4 or 5 references in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's and then the nice thing about this is the first book that I've published independently. So the nice thing about, like, if you publish a book with Scribner, which my first couple of books were on there, or Abrams Image, which I published Weird Al the book, like once your book is done, your book is done.
Mm.
They can maybe go back and fix some glitches or some typos or whatever. But when you are publishing your own book, you can kind of go back and change whatever you'd like, and you almost have the sort of a dangerous impulse to be like George Lucas, or to be like Francis Ford Coppola, and they just never stop messing what you already did. But yeah, I think there comes a certain point where we have to be like, okay, it is what it is, and people are either going to like it or they're not going to like it, and you just have to let well enough alone.
Yeah.
But it took me 6 or 7 months before I finished changing things. And I'm like, okay, I can leave well enough alone
Oh, it's like having gone through, I completely and totally see exactly, where you're coming from. And I think removing a lot of those references, you kind of afforded your book the timelessness that it deserves to have. Because Weird Al has been around, for my entire life. So for me, he just is a thing that is and always will be, and he doesn't exist in any one time for me. And so I think the fact that you kind of helps to ensure that your book about him, which it's a big giant really awesome love letter, and I think the fact that you kind of made it as timeless as it needed, as timeless as he is hugely beneficial.
Oh, thank you. And that's the thing that's kind of fascinating to me is kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to write this book was I feel like you can sort of tell the story of the last 4 decades of music or popular culture. That he's kind of this microcosm of kind of everything that's been happening. And yeah, his stuff is just kind of paradoxically like very, very dated. I mean, look at a song like, I don't know, to choose one at random, Here's Johnny. That is
Yeah.
so inherently rooted in like the Reagan era and this time when, Ed McMahon was this ubiquitous figure. And it's interesting. I sort of talked in my it's stuff that I probably cut out because it was too pretentious. I talked about the idea of sort of the monoculture and this idea that there used to be this time where everybody kind of knew the same thing. There were like
Mm.
three networks. There's ABC, CBS, or
NBC.
NBC.
Yeah.
There were these huge movies, there were these songs that everybody knew. And I feel like Weird Al is kind of this fascinating figure where he's sort of one of the sole remaining icons of the monoculture. And this figure that everybody knew about, he's a household name. And not only does everybody know about him, but everybody knows the songs that he's parodying. Because that's the essence of a Weird Al song is I think in the history of his entire career, he's released one parody of a song that wasn't a big hit, and that one song was "Ruthless People." And
Mm-hmm.
he took a gamble, and it's interesting because I think he has his because it's one of his least successful parodies. He's taken a dim view of like the whole enterprise, but if you go back and look at Ruthless People, like that's a very funny movie. And it was a big hit, and I like it so much that I actually kind of started liking the Mick Jagger song, just because boy oh boy do they sell the crap out of it. They obviously felt like okay, we have Mick frickin' Jagger to do the theme song for like our silly, modestly budgeted dark comedy. Like we better pimp the hell out of it. But again, it was written by Dave Edmonds, Daryl Hall, and Mick Jagger. So you have like three of the most successful songwriters like the last 50 years all collaborating on a big movie song, a theme song, and then it just did not happen at all. But again, even stuff like Jesus, that song, Radioactive.
Yeah.
Like I remember, like, oh, that's a reasonably popular song. Like, it's annoying. I don't like it. I don't think anybody's like, oh man, I love the Imagine Dragons. They're so great. That was on the charts for 2 years. That
Oh my God.
literally
Really?
was on the pop charts for longer than any other song in history.
Really?
Uh,
Yeah, it was on there for a long time. Yeah, I remember hearing that on the radio for so long, like in the top 20s and 40s and whatever. Went on too long.
yeah. Yeah, I mean that kind of like like Old Town Road. Another thing
Uh-huh.
where like yeah, the God that went on the God that was literally like one of the most popular songs of all time, and I sort of talked to my oh, it's preposterously catchy. And I was sort of talking in my book about there are certain themes that Al has dealt with that you expect to recur. Like Star Wars. Of course, people are going to be excited about Star Wars in 2020 and 2030 and 2040. And then there's stuff that you don't expect will ever come around again, like Achy Breaky Heart, where it's like, what are the odds that the world will be like, oh man, I hate that this Billy Ray Cyrus song is so popular. You just can't avoid Billy Ray Cyrus. He's everywhere.
No.
He's so incredibly popular. And then who is
He's
like
incredibly popular. His daughter is incredibly popular.
exactly?
But
And
that's
then
besides the point.
like that is fascinating to me. Again, that he's been around long enough that there are like entire families that he has parodied. And it's entirely possible. That Miley Cyrus's son or daughter he will
Yeah,
parody.
right?
That's
That
wild.
released his final song at like 93 years old. Be like, I had to do it. I had
Oh
to
my God.
finish the trilogy. The trilogy.
The trilogy. Oh my.
The triumvirate. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my
So,
God.
Lauren, to go back to your point that you made a while ago, is that like, yeah, Weird Al has been around our lives like the entire time.
Yeah.
So, Nathan, what was your first exposure to Weird Al? Like, what do you remember that being?
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah. I remember very definitely. Kind of, this was part of my introduction to popular music. I was, I think, 7 or 8 years old. And yeah, it was this amazing time when MTV was kind of magical and kind of beautiful. And the idea was, that it was like the hottest, hippest, most interesting, most cutting edge, most avant garde uh, network on television. And I think, yeah, for a couple of years, it kind of had that cachet. And I remember my dad bought 3 albums. The first 3 albums that I ever owned, one of which was Michael Jackson Thriller, another of which was Huey Lewis and the News Sports,
Hmm.
and then a little album called Michael Jackson 3D. Weird Al Yankovic in 3D. People thought it was very derivative when Michael Jackson did his in 3D. And yeah, I remember just being absolutely riveted by it. And again, I think that's still my favorite Weird Al Yankovic album. Like when I got the big box set, and you could get like an autographed test pressing. I chose in 3D, and I feel
Oh,
like in a lot of ways it's sort of his real debut.
I
Uh,
agree. Yeah,
yeah, because
I
when you look
agree.
at like Weird Accord, yeah, Weird Al Yankovic, like it's an odds and ends. It's like a bunch of songs that he'd already recorded, a bunch of songs that people were familiar with, and then like 6 new things. And
Mhm.
there's kind of a scrappiness to it. I like to say that it's his punk album. In
Yeah.
part because he's sort of dealing with punk and new wave, but then also just the production is very raw, and the production is kind of rushed, and they kind of put it together very, very quickly. I kind of felt like within 3D, the first album where it's like, okay, I'm going to make this album. This is going to be a representation of everything that I've done so far. This is going to be an expression of who I am as an artist. Again, I feel like there's I hesitate to use the word perfection, but
Mhm.
there's a beauty and a purity and a freshness to the album that's really remarkable. And then the other, I guess, big sort of ways that I consumed Weird Al was through MTV. And from the music videos for "I Love Rocky Road," for Ricky, and again, I think just as a child, I'm like, this feels like it was created specially for me.
Wow.
Like this feels like something that I relate to, like on such a profound level. So yeah, so those were the big things, was seeing those videos on MTV and then watching the LTV specials. And then yeah, in 3D being one of the very first albums that I ever owned and that I listened to a lot. And then when I was a kid, I loved the radio. And the radio was still a thing when I was that age. And yeah, kind of my two jams were Casey Kasem and the Top 40, and then Dr. Demento. And I felt
Yeah.
like, again, one was kind of a crazy Muirhouse version of the other. And that sort of Casey Kasem was like the very respectable, mainstream proper. And then, yeah, kind of Dr. Demento was the inmates running the asylum.
Yeah. So would you say that In 3D is your favorite album because it was your first exposure to Al, or do you just really find that as his debut, pure debut, other than like obviously his self-titled, because we've talked about it, like he's trying so hard on his eponymous album that it almost like loses some value because of how hard he's trying. But in
Well,
3D, yeah.
oh, yeah, 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 totally. No, I mean, and I think part of it is that, like, it really holds up. I think kind of my favorite Weird Al albums. There's that. There's Dare to Be Stupid. It's a big one where I felt like, yeah, he was really, really kind of finding himself, and I feel like one of the big strikes against Dare to Be Stupid is that girls just want to have lunch.
Uh-huh.
Mm, yeah.
That's why I
Agreed.
feel like that song is just so unfortunate on so many levels, and there's no bad song on N3D. And again, I feel like one of the keys to his longevity is that he's maintained a really high level of quality over the course of his whole career. And there are albums that people like more or less than others. I mean, I guess. Yeah, obviously, Polka Party and UHF Soundtrack were not big hits, were not popular favorites at the time they were released, but there's just so much good stuff on each of them. Like there's no Weird Al album that I would say is bad.
Oh,
It
yeah.
goes on a prism to like good to incredibly great. You
Yeah,
know,
I agree.
What
And
would you say would be your least favorite album then? Not to say that it's bad, not to say that it's bad, but what would you think is like the one that you listen to the least because it just doesn't strike you as well as the others?
That's an interesting question. And it's weird. I kind of feel like I'm so deeply invested in this world and on these songs and in these albums that's like, which of your children do you prefer?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Is there one of your children that you just write off? Just isn't that good? Just not bringing it the same way that your other children do. But yeah, I don't know, because again, like I feel like his last stuff, his last couple albums have been really great. They're different elements, different phases of his career, and I feel like kind of the last 20 years or so have been kind of like the mastery years.
Mm-hmm.
Where he kind of knows exactly what he wants to do. He has this technical polish and prowess. It's just I don't know. That is a good question. I don't know what I would say is my least favorite of all of Weird. Yeah, it's weird that I haven't actually thought about it. That is a good question, as evidenced by the fact that I don't have an answer for it.
Well,
Yeah.
keep thinking about it, because one of the things that we've actually done in putting this podcast together is John and I have spreadsheets, and we have a ton of spreadsheets where we have ranked like everything. We each kind of individually kind of did like a 1 through 14 on the albums, and then we did songs on each album, and John made what we call our weird algorithm that kind of puts everything together in a mastery ranked sort of order. So
a master ranked list, yeah.
So it's very much what you said, though. It's not that it's not good or bad. Like, there's nothing bad. It
just doesn't hit you the way that other stuff does. Like,
yeah.
I think the worst song on In 3D that we chose might have been Buy Me a Condo, which like, not to say that it's bad, like, it's not terrible, but like, it's just not our favorite. Like, it came in, there's 163 album songs, right? And Buy Me a Condo came in at 150.
Wow.
Just because of the way the algorithm works, it like kind of spreads the songs out in such a way that like the worst song on that particular album is gonna end up being low, because every album gets like a weight rank, and then like every song within that album gets its weight rank, and then you multiply everything together, and then it just kind of spreads itself out.
That's interesting, because if I'm not mistaken, that also has the only drug reference in all of Al's recorded output. Yeah. And again, it's there's so many kind of miracles about Al's career, and places where he should have gone horribly, egregiously wrong, and we should be looking back in embarrassment. And one of those is that he has sort of inhabited the persona and sort of the literal outfits of so many different artists and people and characters, and a lot of them are not white, and yet he's walked this very, very fine line. I think maybe Gandhi too. He might have slipped a little bit there of again doing the stuff without being offensive, or without being problematic. Or because and I think a part of what makes I really love Buy Me a Condo, and I think what makes it work, is that the satirical target is not Rastafarians.
Right.
It's not reggae. It's not this idea of like, it's whiteness. It's white culture. It's the idea of American culture being just an endless series of like, vanilla candles from Yankee Bean or something. Coming from this rich, vibrant culture, and then seeing, Izod and swimming pools and all these things. So I think there's definitely almost a bit of a kind of like a Randy Newman quality to it, where he's kind of inhabiting this alternate perspective, that's very different from who he was in 1984, and who he is after that.
Yeah.
We actually just recently recorded our episode on Buy Me a Condo, and we decided that it was more about the American dream in the early 80s than it is about Rastafarianism.
Because
I need to have those wall-to-wall carpets and a wallet full of credit cards and the shirt with the alligator on. Like, he's looking for those, like, keeping up with the Joneses, like...
Well, and it's such a wonderful inversion of the usual thing, where people are like,
Right.
"Oh, I'm so tired of my, bland." And again, it's a little bit kind of like analogous to Dog Eat Dog, where the essence of rock and roll is to be like we're rebelling against conformity, we're rebelling against consumerism, we're rebelling against the idea that, like, you got to do what the man tells you to. So I think there's something wonderfully subversive about Al doing these songs where people are in love with consumerism. And they're in love with the emptiness of commercial culture, where it's the antithesis of that, where you have somebody who comes from a culture that has a lot going for it, that is rich and dynamic and soulful, and trading that in for American culture at its most soulless.
This is I'm not sure, Nathan, if you know this, but like John and I are actually we're many states apart in where we live. John's up in Pennsylvania, I'm down here in Florida, so we've kind of taken this podcast as a way to kind of be siblings and nerd out about our childhood together while also sharing beer together from 850 miles apart. And okay, I'm gonna get a little in my head about this for just a second, but we're going somewhere with this, I absolutely promise. It's like Weird Al was the catalyst for the fact that these two siblings that grew up with Weird Al have been able to kind of reconnect from, the entire Eastern Seaboard apart from each other. And it's just so beautiful, man. Like, what he's done is just so beautiful with his whole catalog. I'm just very, very happy. This is a very good day. This is a good day.
Oh, definitely, and I think that's part of what when I started this book. I kind of saw it as a sequel to Weird Al the book.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gonna invest a lot of myself and my sense of humor and my personality and my point of view, but it's not going to be as personal and it's not going to be as intense as You Don't Know Maybe You Don't Like Me, which is a book I wrote about. Kind of having nervous breakdowns and becoming a big fan of Insane Clown Posse and Fish, and about how there's kind of a spiritual element to it. They don't just go to a show to hear songs that you like. You go to shows to feel like part of a community. You go to shows to feel a sense of continuity, to feel a sense of tradition, to feel like you belong. And there's this really special place. It's kind of nirvana, and I think what I kind of realized while I was writing this book is like, oh, this is a sequel to You Don't Know Me, You Don't Like Me. And this is about the sort of how Weird Al fandom is also a sense of identity and a sense of community and a sense of transcendence, and going to a show and, hearing Fun Zone, like those opening chords. Like, again, it's just such a wonderful Pavlovian experience, and it just brings you back to all these great times that you've had in your childhood and, some of your favorite parts of being in adulthood. So, yeah, I think that's kind of one of the things that I discovered while writing this book was like, oh yeah, this is just as personal as my other ones, and it's also about how being a Weird Al fan is as defining as being a juggalo or being somebody who's seen Fish 47 times.
Have you really seen
which I
Fish
think I have.
47
If you know how many times you've seen Fish, you have not seen Fish often enough.
That's what I mean, and it's really interesting, because those three particular artists, right? Fish, Insane Clown Posse, and Weird Al, they're all very completely different, unique fan experiences. But you definitely have said it again, that it's like a very immersive fan experience, and when you're there, you're part of a group that's there like for the exact same thing, and I last June I saw the Strings Attached tour down here in St. Augustine, and I had front row tickets with one of my buddies, and Tacky, he was doing Tacky, and a couple of people in the front row kind of got up and started dancing in that little area between the front row and the stage, and I could not do that. So I felt that sense of community. I was literally dancing like 2 inches away from people I didn't even know at a Weird Al concert. And I ended up on, the big screen. A buddy of mine who was like sections and sections and sections back texted me the next day. He was like, I saw you on the big screen at the Weird Al concert. And I'm like, no way. That's wild. But it was it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life, because you're right. I felt this sense of community that like you don't get at a lot of other shows, because nobody's getting mad at you at a Weird Al concert. You know,
Well, that
everybody,
was the concert that the bouncer told you to sit down, right?
he did.
Well,
Yes.
it's funny. Like when I was going on my big 2018 ridiculously self-indulgent vanity tour, I went to 7 shows over the course of like, geez, it must have been a week and a half,
Oh
and it
my
was
god.
interesting because I was traveling around a lot, and people would be like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm seeing Weird Al. He's doing the special tour where he only plays originals and pastiches." They'd be like, "What? I had no idea he did anything other than parodies."
Mm.
Also, I didn't know that he was around anymore. So it's almost like this sort of secret handshake, the secret knowledge that everybody knows the hit songs, everybody knows the parodies, but the fans, have that reverence for the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota,
I'm wearing the shirt right
or
now.
yeah, oh, totally, totally, totally.
And I
This
got big rice heating and plumbing on.
Yeah, I mean, like half of the shirts that I have are specific references to Weird Al songs,
Yay.
and it's nice again, like when people see that and they're like, "Hey, I totally get that."
When you went
It's
to that tour, did you go to the Atlantic City show?
I did not. I went to. I started in Chicago, and then I went from Chicago, Indiana, Augusta. That was really
Hmm.
amazing. Yeah, the Augusta show was probably my favorite of all time because he mentioned, well, there was like a fire alarm emergency, and then he mentioned me from the stage.
Oh.
Yeah, and he's
Cool.
like, oh, and the crazy thing is, like, I barely got it there. Like, I in order to in order to make it to the Augusta show, I needed to find somebody to drive me from this place that had no public transportation 40 miles to a place where they did have like where they did have a Greyhound bus stop. But yeah, I totally had to do a Hail Mary. I totally, like, on my Facebook group, I said, "Hey, I
Mm.
know it's gonna sound kind of weird, but like, does anybody live in within 40 miles of this place in Indiana that is so remote and so off the map that they have no public transportation? They don't have any buses, they don't have any Uber, they don't have any lifts. Like, I'd be happy to pay $300, but like, there's no options." And yeah, somebody from Facebook group, like their dad, like drove 30
Hmm.
miles and was like, "Hey, yeah, you're like a friend of my daughter's." And I'm like, "Yes, virtually." And yeah, he had to like drive me 30 miles, and then like it took 18 hours to get to Augusta, the home of James Brown. And then yeah, when he like said, "Oh, there's a guy here at Nathan Rabin. He wrote my coffee table book, and he's writing another table book," and I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god!" And then he said, "Yeah, I don't. People asked me to write my autobiography." But I don't know why when I've already written it in the form of this song. And then he performed Albuquerque.
Oh.
So yeah, so ever since then, I've felt like Albuquerque and sort of the biggest ball of twine in Minnesota. Those were kind of my songs, more so than Word Crimes, which is also my song, but makes me feel very guilty for having such terrible grammar and for committing so many word crimes myself.
Oh, well, at least you have somebody in your life that can fix those word crimes for you.
I do, and my wife is she's a teacher and has several postgraduate degrees, so she can. She just doesn't particularly want to.
Ah, yeah, it's a job, but somebody's got to do it, right? I'm just about done with my beer. John, are you done with your beer?
I finished mine long ago.
Oh, all
Pretty
right.
much once I said, "Oh, I have one sip left," I took that sip.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we've kind of hit the length of what a Beard Owl podcast episode usually is. So, Nathan, I figured, you know what? You want to tell the people that are listening to this, plug whatever the heck you want at this point. Tell us.
Sure. Sure. Well, I guess first and foremost, I have the Weird Accordion Al, the original version that covers all of his albums in chronological order. I also have the extended version, which has all of that stuff, plus every episode of The Weird Al Show, every episode of his season of Comedy Bang Bang, plus the complete Al, plus UHF, and the 2018 tour. So it's 500 pages. It has over 80 illustrations from a brilliant guy named Philip A. Zaburo. I'm very lucky. He did great, great, great work. I never get tired of it. And then I have a website, Nathan Rabin's Happy Place, where I write a lot about Weird Al Yankovic. It's a lot of fun. You can see all the original Weird Accordion to Al articles. You can see how different they are from the stuff that I had up in the book, how much more self-indulgent, how many bad jokes I cut. I exercise for time. I also have a podcast where I do a deep, deep dive called Travolta Cage. And me and my co-host, Clint Worthington, we watch every movie that John Travolta made and every movie that Nicolas Cage made to determine who is better. Spoiler, it's Nicolas Cage, obviously. But that's a lot of fun.
I have a point about that.
Yes.
Oh, man. So, Face Off is a masterpiece of acting, right?
Of course, yes.
When you really think about it. Because you've got Travolta playing his character, but then also playing Cage's character, playing Travolta's character. That's gotta be so difficult. And then also the same goes for Cage. But Cage pulls it off so much better.
Well, he's the better actor, you know?
Right.
And he has the more, I guess they both have shticks, you know? They both have personas that, you know, you can kind of inhabit. But that's been fun. I think kind of the only overlap is that there is a Michael Jackson video called Iberian Girl that features cameos from both Weird Al Yankovic and John Travolta.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's pretty. Oh, and then finally, I wrote a book not about Weird Al Yankovic this year called Postal. That's about the video game and the movie Postal and Uwe Boll and Vince Desi. They're sort of eccentric / hated creators, and that recently made Polygon's list of the top 10 video game books of 2020. Yeah. So if you like and Weird Al has read Postal and he liked it, so that's always nice.
Ah, that is always nice. Gosh, yeah. I had a really good chat today, and I'm very happy about it. And I want to thank you, Nathan, for joining us today, because this has been wonderful and amazing.
Oh, definitely.
Astounding. And John, do you have anything else you want to say?
I've got nothing, my dude.
Okay, my guy. That's all right. So I guess we're gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna put a pin in this one. And from all of us at the extended Weird Al podcast, I'm still Lauren.
And I'm still John.
And Nathan, thank you so much for being with us today.
I had it was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Yay, you're welcome. All right, bye people.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.